Cool. I'm on. Well, you're welcome to listen. We have 9 chapters of genealogies to cover, so guaranteed to keep you awake. Yes. The 9 chapters of genealogies? Yeah, well, we're going to have it. Welcome to MBS students. We're doing the Old Testament survey. Something happened to my pointer. Let's try this. Old Testament survey, we just finished it up. The Kings, and so we decided we wanted to go over it again. First and Second Kings and First and Second Chronicles parallel each other, a little bit different perspective. Kings is more about Israel. Chronicles is more about Judah. Of course, you can't really separate the two, so there's going to be spillover from both books. But we're going to cover from Adam to David tonight. Well, past David, all the way into the captivity and after the captivity. So we're going to be, this is a book of genealogies. Chronicles, the Book of Chronicles, it's a chronological order. That's what it's for. It's mainly a book of history for the Jews. And to keep their records. Key verse, 1 Chronicles 17, 7 through 14, which I believe is part of the Davidic covenant, isn't it? Okay. And then next week, buckle your seats. We're going to do the whole book of 2 Chronicles in one session. Just going to shotgun it at you guys. Fire hydrant. Our thinking legs are going to be a little tired after tonight because we're going to be covering the whole book of 1 Chronicles tonight. But in your outline, it's 2 sections. We're going to talk about God's view and talk about David a little bit tonight. Just a little bit in perspective on David. In 1 Kings, there was a lot about David's humanity, and a lot of things weren't mentioned in First Chronicles. More about the God's view of David. It's kind of interesting. So, not as much on the historic view of what David did historically, but what David did for God. It's kind of cool. And some of the things he said at his death that were not in the first book. So, flip open your Bibles. On your marks, get set, go. Okay, it's 1 Chronicles 1. Adam, Seth, Enoch, Cain, Malelel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We just covered 2,000 years. Okay, now for the next 2,000 years. I love that. Like, the writer just started out of the blocks, at least he put commas in there, right? They just skipped over, and Adam begot Seth, and Seth begot Enosh, and they're just like, Adam, Seth, Enosh, Cain, Malel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth. Whew. Shoot those out of there. Okay, and then it goes into the sons of Japheth. I'm sure that somebody in the past has gotten saved reading this passage. Unfortunately for you guys, you're not going to have that opportunity because I'm not going to read it. So, there's a lot of good stuff in here. If you're looking for your family tree and you happen to be a Jew during the time before Christ, for us, it's cool. They literally have a family genealogy. We spend so much time in our lives, everybody's related to some prince in England. Like, how does that work? Everybody. He must have had a lot of kids because we're all related to somebody famous over there in the homeland, as they refer to it in the early centuries. But yeah, everybody always tracks their family tree back to somebody famous and then quits. We're not going to look anymore. You might have to go through 17 horse thieves, some jailbreakers, some bank robbers, and some hoodlums, and then it stops on somebody halfway famous. And you're like, okay, that's enough. We're done. Well, what is the importance of chronology of your family tree? What were some things that were important? I'm obviously not going to read all these names. It's literally 9 chapters of names. Kind of cool. Chapter 2, verse 12, Boaz is mentioned. We know the story of Boaz. Boaz married Ruth. And Ruth was a, Moabitess. And we got Caleb in there, and we got some cool characters. Interesting thing that I found is when it goes through Judah, remember he did that nasty thing with his daughter-in-law. His daughter-in-law had a son, and that son died, and then he's like, okay, I'll give you my other son, and that other son did some really nasty things, and he died, and she still didn't have a son. She's like, give me your son, and he says, okay, I'll give you my son. He's kind of young, and then she didn't think he was going to, and so she dressed herself up as a harlot, seduced Judah, and conceived, but they had 2 kids, which is really weird. So Judah took her as a wife. That's the only way, unless she had twins. I don't think it says she has twins. So that was really, really messed up. Weird things that I didn't know before. But that was new. So you want to see that in the lineage of Judah, chapter 4. Or actually it's in chapter 1. But chapter 2, verse 12. So why is it important for a Jew? Why is this important for a Jew? Well, let's ask ourselves, when was this written? When was the Chronicles written? Does anybody know? I should have probably found that out before I threw that out there. Anybody have any ideas? Man, you guys are just a cricket crowd tonight. It was written after they came back from captivity. It was written somewhere around 450 BC. 582 BC is when they were taken into captivity. It was written after they were taken into captivity, and I believe in the genealogies, as I was reading last night, that they actually go into people that came back from the land, to the land. So it was written after captivity. Why would this be so important as a Jew? If you come back from being gone from the land for 70 years, you don't know what property is yours. Whose property is Judah's? Or who gets Perez's land? Or who gets, whatever? Or who's a Levite? Or who's a, Benjamite? This is a very, very valuable. This was basically land deeds for Jews. Another thing that's very important is your jobs. If you're a part of Levi's family, one of your jobs was to be a priest's helper. Another reason it's very, very important, which is important for us Christians, is that this had to be maintained until Christ so that we could have a full lineage from Adam to Christ to prove that Christ came from David. And I think whenever I read that in, Matthew? Is it Matthew that has the full genealogy? I am amazed. That is so amazing to be able to track your family tree back 4,000 years. Every single person is amazing. It shows you how small the world, how young the world is, but also it's pretty immense. But this is important because this is part of that stepping stone to Christ. This was almost an attempt to preserve, I believe, their culture in a way. Very, very cool. So anyways, it goes into some things that are great. We're going to skip over most of it. If you want to read genealogies, go ahead. I'm not stopping you. There's just a lot to cover. So, chapter 10. See, we just covered 9 chapters, Jay. Look at that. Yes. One verse I pulled out was Boaz, and that's in chapter 2. Let me make sure there's nothing else here. Great wealth of history. I mean, how cool would it be to be able to track your family back and your family all the way back to Christ's time? 2,000 years. Like, oh yeah, it was Peter's great grandson. It's not that far. Generations don't go that far. But I mean, of course, somebody would have to track you back to Peter, or, as long as it wasn't like Judas. Or maybe like Pontius Pilate. Oh yeah, I'm Pontius Pilate's great. You're not allowed in the church. No, okay. I need to stop with the humor and get on with the teaching. Chapter 10. So Saul gets like 3 sentences in Chronicles. He dies. Chapter 10. The battle was fierce. We know the story. Saul told his armor bearer, draw your sword, thrust it through me, and he didn't. So the armor bearer was greatly afraid. Therefore Saul fell on a sword. His armor bearer, say that 10 times fast, fell on his sword. 3 sons died. We're in chapter 10. The Philistines defile Saul and his sons, and then the cause of Saul's death. I thought that this was important to read. 10:13 through 14. So Saul died. Why did Saul die? For his unfaithfulness, which he had committed against the Lord, because he did not keep the word of the Lord, capital letters, Yahweh here, and also because he consulted a medium for guidance. You guys remember the story in 1 Kings. I can't believe it, Jared. You eat a cookie and you don't share it with anybody. That's horrible. You stole it from the church too. That's even worse. With a deacon here. So, he consulted a medium for guidance. We remember that story where he calls up Samuel, and Samuel actually shows up and the medium freaks out. So he dies for being unfaithful to the Lord, for being unfaithful, for not keeping the word of the Lord. How important is it to keep God's word? And for consulting a medium for guidance. But he did not inquire. We're going to find out how important it is to inquire from the Lord. He did not inquire of the Lord, therefore he killed him and turned the kingdom over to David, the son of Jesse. Saul sought the Lord didn't answer him. Instead of repenting, he went and sought a medium. And in this case, medium doesn't mean like small, medium, large. Medium means a witch, a witchcraft woman. Okay, so chapter 11. All of Israel comes and unites against David. I mean, not against David. For David. They're kind of doing a drive-through history here really quickly. The Conquest of Jerusalem is in chapter 11. The chiefs. This was kind of cool. Chapter 11, verse 10. If you want to be amazed at what Herculean acts people can do, let's see. (11 through 14). And this is the number of the mighty men whom David had. Jashobeam, the son of Hakmonit, chief of the captains. He had lifted up his spear against 300 killed by him at one time. This guy killed 300 people with a spear. I mean, can you imagine? 300 people running, okay, I'll take you on. I just can't even imagine it. That gave him one of the top 3. After him was Eleazar, the son of Dodo. Seriously, Eleazar, the son of Dodo. You know why he was such a fierce fighter? You know that country song, He Called Me Sue? He probably was defending his dad. Oh, you're Dodo's son. Oh, I'm going to kill you. Probably not. But I thought it was funny. Eleazar, the son of Dodo, he was a fierce fighter. He was one of the 3 mighty men. There was like this tier of mighty men. He was one of the 3 mighty men. He was with David at Pas Dammim. Now there the Philistines were gathered for battle, and there was a piece of ground full of barley. So the people fled from the Philistines, but they stationed themselves. David and these 3 guys stationed themselves in the middle of the field, defended it. Like, you're not taking our barley. Seriously, that's what they were doing. They were like, this is our barley, you stay away. And defended it and killed the Philistines. So the Lord brought about a great victory. God, the Spirit of the Lord runs to and fro throughout the whole earth, seeking a man on whom he may show himself strong. God wanted somebody to have faith in him, and we see that. These men were not like guerrilla men that could just like take on anybody. They had faith in the Lord, and they knew that the Lord was with him. And through the Lord, they were able to do these mighty works. And so we read through this, and it's easy to focus on the person. But they weren't anything special. Remember, these are the people that were the complainers, the people that were in debt, and the dregs of Israel that were mumbling and, what did it say? Everybody that was in debt, everybody that was disgruntled, and everybody that just basically a group of misfits come to David at the cave, and those turn into his mighty men. I don't know about you, but I usually don't go look for great warriors in the people that are being contacted by debt collection agencies. That's not who I usually go pick my best fighters out of. But David's mighty men were amazing because they trusted in the Lord. Joab was not mentioned in the mighty men. He was not one of the 3 top. So they defended the barley. Quickly, we'll go through this. 16. Okay. I just wanted to read through this because it's really cool. David was then in the stronghold in the garrison of the Philistine, was then in Bethlehem. We know where Bethlehem is. And David said with longing, oh, that someone would bring me a drink of water from the well of that Bethlehem, which is by the gate. He had a longing for his hometown water. Now, that's great unless you live in Camas Valley. Camas Valley's water is full of iron. But you know what's weird? Is when I have not been in Camas Valley for a long time, I long for that irony water. I remember when I would come back from a mission trip, I would go and drink that water and it tastes horrible, but it's home water. And he's just like, oh, I missed that. Oh, that I could have that water from Bethlehem. Probably shouldn't expound on that too much. So remember the 3 dynamic trio, broke through the camp of the Philistines and drew water from the well. So somebody's pulling up water while the other 2 are fighting off the Philistines. They bring the water back to David, and he says, far be it from me, O my God, that I should do this. Shall I drink the blood of these men who have put their lives in jeopardy? For at the risk of their lives they brought it. Therefore he would not drink it. These were done by the 3 mighty men. Abishai, the brother of Joab, was chief of another 3. So there was like this. He had lifted up his spear against 300 men, killed them, and won a name among these 3. Of the 3, he was more honorable than the other 2. Therefore, he became captain. However, he did not attain to the first 3. So they had the top 3, and then they had the lower 3. Abishai was the top 3 below the first top 3. It's kind of cool. He tears it out here. Benaniah, the son of Jehoiada, was a valiant man from Kabzeel, who did many deeds. He killed 2 lion-like heroes of Moab. He also had gone down and killed a lion in the midst of a pit on a snowy day. Don't know how many of you had done that. You know, when it's snowing outside, I usually want a sled, not go kill lions. But if you're cold and you need a nice jacket, maybe that's why he did it. He killed an Egyptian man at great height, 5 cubits tall, and Egyptian, I believe that's about 8 feet. Had there a spear like a weaver's beam, and this guy takes the spear from the Egyptian and kills him with his own spear. Okay, we got through that. There's a lot of mighty men listed, and their names are all there, and later on in chapter 26 through. And then 12 is the mighty men of Ziklag. This is kind of the standing army. No, it's just, we haven't gotten to that yet. Just some more mighty men of David. Okay, so we're going to skip over to, mighty men of Hebron. Okay, so if you want to find out what his standing army is here, you can go through this number and add up the number. Later on, it was around 1 million men, standing army of the Israelites. That's a big army. It goes through all the tribes and how many came who could bear arms for David. So chapter 13, we're getting to the meat and potatoes. Chapter 13, I labeled, you cannot come to God on your terms, but his. If the Queen of England invites you to a banquet and you come in slacks and your hair's not combed, that wouldn't be a problem for you. Yeah, you probably couldn't come in this outfit. They'll kick you out, right? They'll kick you out. When you come to somebody that is worthy of high honor, you have to come in a manner that is proper to their class. You come to my house, you can show up in your slacks. That's fine. If you come to Aaron's house, on the other hand, if you come to somebody's house of honor, like even though I don't really like our president, if I were to come to meet him, I would come in a fashion that was appropriate to that individual's ranking. What about God? How should we approach the living God who created the heavens and the earth? Do we just throw him in a wheelbarrow and carry him along with the wheelbarrow? This scene, like, who thinks to throw God's seat on a wheelbarrow? You think about it. You guys have seen movies and paintings. Whenever anybody's in authority, they're always carried in this covered chair with 4 guys carrying them up off the ground so they don't even have to walk. And I don't know who thought of the idea to throw God's seat on a wheelbarrow. But anyways, that's what they do. Chapter 13, we're going to find out that God had some things to say about this. David consulted with the captains of the thousands and hundreds and with every leader. And David said to all the assembly of Israel, "If it seems good to you, and if it seems good to the Lord, let us send out our brethren everywhere who are left in all the land of Israel, and with the priests and the Levites who are in their cities and in their common lands, and they may gather together to us. And let us bring the ark of the Lord God back to us, for we have not inquired at it since the days of Saul." Who did David consult? The captains and every leader. Who did David not consult? God. David didn't consult God. We're going to find out it is very, very important to consult God about everything. Everything, every decision. So, they decide, oh, let's put the ark of God on a cart and pull it by a cow. You know, if God would have said, throw the ark on a cart and have it pulled by a cow, that's what they should have done. But God had specific instructions on how his ark was supposed to be carried so that it would be honored and revered by the people. It was supposed to be covered up by the priests, and then it was supposed to be carried by the Levites, correct? I think it was the job of the Levites. Yeah, it was the job of the Levites to bear the ark up. Nobody was allowed to look at it. Now, do you guys remember what the last thing that happened with this ark was? Remember the last point in history where the ark shows up? It's when the Philistines take it in battle. And Eli's sons go out to fight, and they like, oh, we're going to bring the ark of God as a good luck charm. The Philistines take it in battle. God strikes them with plagues, and so they send it back, and it comes back to Israel. They crack it open, and 30,000 men die because they opened the ark of God and looked inside of it. 30,000 men died. Now that was, 30 years ago, 25 years ago. They had forgotten the severity of God and how God wants his throne treated. Now, God did not want him to worship it, but it was a representation of where God sat. And God wanted it treated with the respect that it was due, because it was a part of his instructions on what his temple in heaven looks like. And so they carried it on a cart. Verse 9, and when they came to Chidon's threshing floor, Uzzah put out his hand to hold the ark, for the oxen stumbled. Then the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and he struck him because he put his hand out to the ark, and he died before God. And David became very angry for the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah. Therefore, that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. David was afraid of God at that day and said, how can I bring the ark of God to me? So David would not move the ark within the city of David, but took it aside in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gileadite. The ark of God remained with the family of Obed-Edom in the house 3 months, and the Lord blessed the house of Obed-Edom all that he did. God's goal was not to curse Israel. He blesses Obed-Edom's house. God's goal was to cause Israel to have respect and to see the ark of God as what was outlined in the scriptures. It was disobedience. They didn't consult God. He consulted men. I don't think that's a word, consulted. It is now. Okay, chapter 15. Chapter 14. David's house is constructed. Quick summary here. Chapter 14. Cool verse here. Hiram, king of Tyre, sends cedars. Verse 2. So David knew that the Lord had established him as king over Israel, for his kingdom was highly exalted for the sake of the people Israel. David knew that it was God who established his kingdom, not his own might, not his own strength. And we need to realize that whenever we accomplish something in our lives, it's not by our own might, it's not by our own strength. God is the one that allows us to have victory and have great achievements. Then David took more wives. It's a bummer. In Jerusalem, and David begot more sons and daughters. And these are the names of his children whom he had in Jerusalem. And it names off a bunch of names. It's a bummer. That was the downfall of David. Many a great man of God, the downfall is sexuality. Many a great man. Beware, flee youthful lusts, but pursue righteousness, faith, hope, and peace with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. Okay, so David has victory over the Philistines. Inquire of the Lord. David learned a lesson here. Now, when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over all of Israel, and the Philistines went up to search for David because Why? David used to be like in their hometown, and he was supposed to be, part of them. And they're like, oh, we got to go stomp this out, because they knew David was a mighty warrior. And David, verse 10, inquired of God, saying, shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand? And the Lord said to him, go up, for I will deliver them into your hand. Was God not wanting to talk to David about the ark? No. David never asked. What if David had asked about the ark? Uzzah he probably still wouldn't be alive, but he would have not had that to touch the ark. So God says, go up and defeat them. So they went to Baal Perazim, and David defeated the Philistines. And they named the place, God has broken through my enemies. And they left their gods there, and David gave the command, and they were burnt by fire. Then the Philistines once again made a raid on the valley. Therefore David inquired of the Lord again. And it's a good thing he inquired of the Lord, because God had different instructions. He could have just said, oh, God said to do it last time, let's go do it. But no, God wanted him to be constantly in communication with him, and God wants you to be constantly in communication with him. And God said to him, you shall not go up after them, circle around them, and come upon them in front of the mulberry trees. Have you guys seen mulberry trees? They're not very big. But in Israel, you got to find something to hide behind, because there's not very much there. Mulberry tree, that's good enough for me. But beware of the mulberry trees. There may be somebody hiding in them. Around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased. Isn't that? Yeah. In that one, it's a bush. Anyways, moving on. And it shall be when you hear the sound of the marching in the tops of the mulberry trees, then you shall go out to battle, for God has gone out before you to strike the camp of the Philistines. And David did as God commanded him, and they drove back the army of the Philistines from Gibeon as far as Gezer. They chased them all the way back from Gibeon to Gezer. They pushed them back further towards the coast. So, then the fame of David went out into all the lands, and the Lord brought the fear of him upon all the nations. Super cool. He inquired of the Lord. Chapter 15. David learned a lesson. David built houses for himself in the city of David, and he prepared a place for the ark of the Lord and pitched a tent for it. Then David said, no one may carry the ark of God but the Levites, for the Lord has chosen them to carry the ark of God and to minister before him. And David gathered all of Israel together in Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the Lord in its place which he had prepared for it. And David assembled the children of Aaron and Levi. He said, sanctify yourselves. He learned a lesson. Either he read the Old Testament and found out or he inquired of the Lord. Okay, so let's see here. Flip over to verse 12. He said to them, you are the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites. Sanctify yourselves, you and your brethren, that you may bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel to a place I have prepared for it. When you go to do something for the Lord, and you've been called to do something for the Lord. I actually did this myself when I was preparing to teach. And the Levites were supposed to sanctify themselves before they carried the ark of the Lord. I stopped what I was doing and I said, Lord, is there anything that I need to sanctify myself from before I stand and teach your word? Is there any sin that I have in my heart? Is there anything that you want to clean in me before I go and do this thing for you? That is a very, very good thing to do, so that it doesn't hinder the work of the Lord. Your sin doesn't hinder the work of the Lord. Sanctify yourselves before you go out and you do that evangelism, or you go out and you do that children's ministry, or you go out and you do that, whatever it may be. Sanctify yourself. Ask the Lord, is there anything that you want to clean off of me before I go and do this? He said to them, you are the heads of the father's house of the Levites. Sanctify yourselves, you and your brethren, that you may bring up the ark of the Lord of Israel to the place I have prepared for it. I sense a little blame shifting in verse 13. For because you did not do it first in the first time, for because you didn't do it the first time, the Lord our God broke out against us. It's your fault. Maybe that's not the attitude David had, but it sounds like that. Because you didn't do it the first time. Doesn't that sound like two adults? Because you didn't do it the first time, now we got to fix the problem that we did before. Okay, so the priests and the Levites sanctified themselves to bring the ark of the Lord up. They had the fear of the Lord. What is the fear of the Lord? It's the beginning of wisdom. That's what it is. It's a lot of things, but it's the beginning of wisdom. Okay, verse 26. Let's flop down to 26. And so it was when God helped, I like this, when God helped the Levites who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord, that they offered 7 bulls and 7 rams. Now, that may not make sense to you, but a man that has butchered hundreds and hundreds of animals, to butcher 7 animals in one day, 4 guys, it seems like the 4 guys, the guys that carried the ark, to butcher 7 bulls and 7 rams in one day, they needed the Lord's help. It's a feat. It's not a small thing. But maybe he was talking about them carrying up. But as a butcher, I just found that God helped them to butcher the 7 bulls. If I had 7 bulls to cut up, Lord help me. This is going to be a long day with a rock. And what do we have? Does anybody have a knife? Okay. Most of their knives were sharpened rocks to slaughter those animals. And if you've ever slaughtered a bull, to do it with a sharpened rock. Okay, and David clothed himself in robes of fine linen, and as well as the Levites who bore the ark, and the singers and the Chenana, the music master, Chananiah. He was the music master. David also wore a linen ephod. He wanted to be one of the people that helped with the Lord, but he wasn't a Levite, so what does he do? He puts on the linen ephod to just draw as close as he could to the Lord. So thus all Israel brought up the ark of the covenant of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of horn, with trumpets, and with cymbals, making music with stringed instruments and harps. What a beautiful thing when you do the Lord's will in the Lord's plan. It was the Lord's will to bring the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. It was the Lord's plan to bring it in through the Levites after they had been sanctified, bearing it up on their arms in a holy manner. When you do the Lord's will in the Lord's plan, it's a very, very beautiful thing. When you do the Lord's will and you decide to throw God's throne in the wheelbarrow, it doesn't turn out good. Do the Lord's will in the Lord's plan. If there's something spoken of on how to do things, perfect example, how to structure a church. It may be the Lord's will to start a church somewhere. It may be the Lord's will to start a church in your town, your village, your county. Do that in the Lord's plan. What is the Lord's plan on how to start a church? Research it. We're not going to teach on that tonight, but research it in the scriptures. See what the Lord's plan is to do the Lord's will. Okay. So they burnt sacrifices to the Lord, chapter 16. They burnt sacrifices to the Lord. They appointed musicians. They sang a psalm of praise. Oh, give thanks to the Lord. Call upon his name. Make known his deeds among the people. Sing to him. Sing songs to him. Talk of his wondrous works. Glory in his holy name. Let the heart of those who rejoice who seek the Lord. Seek the Lord and his strength. Seek his face everywhere. Remember his marvelous works which he has done. It's a great song. It's a beautiful song. It's Psalms 105. If you want to read it in a different spot, it's the same song. It's a beautiful song, and it's great. The great time of Israel right now. There's no sin. Well, there was sin, but they're following the Lord. They did the Lord. They did what the Lord wanted to in the ark, and it's just great. The whole nation, the whole group of Israel. Okay, so chapter 17, David desires to build a house, and this is where we get some very interesting prophecies. David desires to build a house. He asks Nathan. Nathan says, go ahead and do it. But then God says to Nathan, he's not supposed to do it. Go tell him this. And he says, I've appointed for your son to build my house. But verse 11 through 14, and it shall be, this is chapter 17, verse 11 through 14, and it shall be when your days are fulfilled, when you must go to be with your fathers, that I will set up your seed after you, who will be of your sons. This is an important verse. He will be of your sons. And I will establish his kingdom forever. Christ had to be the son of David. He had to be. Therefore, the genealogies are very important. Because I've never heard anybody dispute whether Christ was David's son. And if the scribes of his time were to dispute whether he was David's son, well, they could follow his father's lineage down and find out that he was David's son through his father's lineage. But then they could say, oh, well, your father wasn't your real father. You were conceived, they would have said outside of marriage, but he was conceived by the Holy Spirit. And they would have followed Mary's line down and found out that Mary's line was also of the lineage of David, which is amazing. If you look at that, God pronounced a curse on one of David's sons, Jeconiah, and because of that curse, Christ couldn't have any of Joseph's blood in him. But that line carried the royal line. That was the royal line, and his mother carried the bloodline, but didn't have Jeconiah's curse. And so he had the royal blessing and the blood blessing from David. So that's why it's important, because of this verse. Because of this verse, we know that Christ had to be the son of David. And what did they call him? What did the crowds call him? What did the blind men call him? Jesus, Yeshua, son of David, have mercy on me. They knew it. They knew that he was the son of David. That's so cool. And it shall be when your days are over, and when they are fulfilled, when you must go to be with your fathers, that I will set your seed up after you, who will be one of your sons, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build me a house, and I will establish his throne forever. This is not talking about Solomon, because Solomon's throne is not established forever. But it is talking about Solomon in a way that Solomon built the house of the Lord. The one on earth here. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. This is an amazing messianic prophecy. And I will not take my mercy away from him, as I took it from him who was before you. And I will establish him in my house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forever. This is how we know it's talking about Christ. Cross-reference, if you want it, Acts 2:30. According to all the words and according to all the visions, so Nathan spoke to David. So beautiful, beautiful prophecy there. And so David just has nothing but praise towards the Lord. David realizes in a sense that the Messiah is going to come through his line, and he's just like honored beyond measure, and he praises the Lord. Okay, so he has victory over Syria. He has victory over Edom. His servants get shaved and their pants cut up, and they're ashamed. And because of that, David takes out some Ammonites. Victory over Syria, victory over Ammonites, chapter 20. We're in chapter 20 now, verses 6 through 8. Yes, again, there was a war at Gath. There was a man of great stature with 24 fingers and toes, 6 on each hand and 6 on each foot. And he also was born to the giant. the verse there, translation. Just a second. I believe that's that word is actually Nephilim. Verse 5. Verse 6. The giant. He was one of this born to the giant. I believe that's the word is Nephilim. But anyways, he had 6 fingers and 6 toes. Man, can you imagine how annoying it would be when you clip your fingernails and your toenails? It's always like a pain to get to that 5th one. Can you imagine if you had 4 extra every single time? Man, can you imagine his mom? You know how hard it is for moms to clip their baby's toenails. Can you imagine the mom like, oh my goodness, I have to clip his toenails again? For goodness sakes, he has 24. My wife and I have 4 kids, and my wife told me with great pride that every time she clips toenails, she clips 100 of them because of our 4 kids and herself. And that's quite a feat. Can you imagine if you had 4 kids with 6 fingers and toes? That would be just the end all. Going through... Yeah, instead of quite a feet, it's quite a foot. That is quite a foot. That's probably not going to translate very well. Anyways, 6 fingers, 6 toes. Weird, but it's there. And I believe it. A lot of people don't believe the Bible because it speaks about these things, but I believe it. I don't know about you guys, but I do. You've seen it?
Six fingers on each hand.
Well, in India? Well, I saw it in the Princess Bride. So, it has to be true if it was in the Princess Bride. Watch out for that guy. Watch out for him. He's really good with the sword. You killed my father. I'm horrible. Hello, my name is... I better not. I'm going to go into this. This is horrible. But, oh, man. Who knew that was going to work into his sermon? Okay, anyways, I believe it. I believe that there was giants in the land. And, a lot of people stumble over the Bible because of these things that it says, but I believe it. Just do a little bit of research about giants. You're going to find out that they existed and they were real. And it's kind of interesting when you look into it. Okay, so I would like to spend more time on that because I would like to, but we need to get through 1 Chronicles. Chapter 21, interesting chapter. So we read this chapter in Kings, and it says the Lord caused David to number the people. In this chapter, it says Satan caused David to number the people, which is very strange. But who's in charge of Satan? Do you guys remember the story of Job? And we covered this last time, but I don't want to skip over it because it may cause somebody to stumble. Who's in charge of Satan? Can Satan do anything without the Lord's permission? No. He has no power to do anything to the believer without the Lord's permission. I would say he has no power to do anything without the Lord's permission, whether it be to the believer or the non-believer. You can argue with me on that, and I'm not going to argue with you right now, but we can argue later. But Satan could not tempt David to do this without the Lord's permission. And the Lord, it seems that the Lord wanted to bring about judgment on Israel. But that's just speculation. That's just what I see it as. Satan cannot tempt you into a sin without the Lord's permission. Regardless of whether it was Satan that tempted him or the Lord that brought this about, David still had a choice. And we're going to see that David had a counselor that begged him not to do it. David had somebody that begged him not to do it. If you have somebody in your life that's close to you, that is saying, this is a really, really bad idea. This is a really, really bad idea. Really, really bad. You should stop and what do you think you should do? Inquire of the Lord. How about that? That's what I want to get out of tonight is we need to inquire of the Lord on what kind of Cheerios we buy. Literally, we need to inquire of the Lord for everything. God never says, well, actually, I'm not going to say that because I didn't research that. But I don't remember God saying, actually, I do remember God saying that, so I'm going to stop. Okay. Satan stood up against Israel, and moved David the number of the people. So David said to Joab and to the leaders of the people, go number of Israel from Dan to Beersheba. And Joab said, may the Lord make his people 100 times more than they are. May the Lord just cause them to just have tons of babies. But, my lord the king, are they not all thy Lord's servants? Why then does my Lord require this? Why should he be why should he be a cause of guilt in Israel? Nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab. Therefore Joab departed and went through all Israel and came to Jerusalem. And he told him the number was 1,100,000 men who drew the sword. And okay, so Israel had 1,100,000 who drew the sword, and Judah had 470,000. Quick math, what is that? 1,570,000. Now we're going to find out. But Joab did not count Levi or Benjamin among them, for the king's word was an abomination to Joab. He didn't count Levi or Judah. Levi or Benjamin. He left 2 tribes completely out because it was so disgusting that he was doing this. And God was displeased with this thing. Therefore, he struck Israel. So David said to God, I have sinned greatly. The best thing to do when you've sinned is not to try to cover it up. Go straight to God and say, I've sinned greatly. God, please forgive me. What do I need to do? I pray, take away the iniquity of your servant, for I have done. David's claiming this. I have done very foolishly. So the Lord gives him 3 options. You can have 3 years of famine, 3 months of defeat from your foes, or 3 days of a plague. So he chooses 3 days of a plague. So the plague went out and killed 70,000 men of Israel. That stinks. And it was so displeasing to the Lord. He sent out and killed 70,000 men of Israel with an angel. And God sent an angel to Jerusalem to destroy it. And he was destroying. As he was destroying, the Lord looked, this is verse 15, and relented of the disaster and said to the angel who was destroying, it is enough. Now restrain your hand. And the angel of the Lord stood by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Then David lifted his eyes and saw the angel of the Lord standing between the earth and the heaven, having in his hand a drawn sword stretched out over Jerusalem. So David and the elders, clothed with sackcloth, fell on their faces. Who's behind the plague? People were dying of a plague, but what was really happening? There was an angel going around hacking people with the sword, but they were dying of a plague. Isn't that interesting? We may think that it's a plague. We may think that it's a disease. We may think that it's a, outbreak. But the reality of it is there is a spiritual presence behind it, which, by the way, was in complete control of God the Father. And when God said, relent, it relented. And David said to the Lord, was it not I who commanded the people to be numbered? This is such a good, true leader. He wants to take the responsibility. Was it not I who caused the people to be numbered? Am I not the one who has sinned before and have done this evil deed? He's saying they didn't cause themselves to be numbered, Lord. I did. This is verse 17. But these sheep, what have they done? Let your hand, I pray, O Lord, my God, be against me and my father's house, but not against your people, that they should be plagued. He's completely self-sacrificing here. He says, cause the people not to be harmed and bring that punishment on me. Therefore the angel of the Lord commanded Gad. Therefore the angel of the Lord commanded Gad to say to David that David should go and erect an ark to the Lord on the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. Well, what is the significance of this threshing floor? David goes and he says, I want to make a sacrifice. Let me buy your ox. Let's see here. He says, David said to Ornan, grant me the place of this threshing floor that I may build an altar on it to the Lord. You shall grant it to me at full price, that the plague may be withdrawn from the people. So he wants to buy this threshing floor from this man so that he can erect an ark there. But Ornan said to David, take it for yourself and let my lord the king do whatever is good in his eyes. Look, I have also given you my ox to burn for a burnt offering, and the threshing implements for wood, and the wheat for the grain offering. I will give it all. Now, this man's sitting here, and we skipped over the part. He's sitting there threshing the wheat, and he looks up, and he sees the angel. And he's just like, ah, and he keeps on threshing the wheat. He's just like, just keep on working, keep swimming, just keep swimming. And so he's a little freaked out. He's got an angel standing over him with a sword, and he's like, take it all, take it all, take it all. Take the grain, take the floor, take the ox, take the implements, take my wristwatch, take everything. And David says, no, I will pay for it. And he says, no, but I will surely buy it for full price. For I will not take what is yours for the Lord, nor offer burnt offerings with that which costs me nothing. David's honorable here. I'm not going to take a free gift and give it to the Lord as an offering. That's not, an offering should cost something. If you get your stimulus check and you send it to Camas Valley Christian Fellowship, we will not complain, even though it didn't cost you anything. Probably shouldn't have said that. Okay, so he buys it for 600 shekels of gold. David builds an altar of the Lord there and offers a burnt offering up to the Lord. Where is this location? This location, this threshing floor, is where the temple of God is built. This location where God's judgment was coming to the people, and God said, stop. I will stop my judgment right here. This was the location where the mercy seat sat, and where the temple of the Lord was built, and where God is going to sit on earth in the New Jerusalem. What an amazing picture. The judgment of God was stopped. God said, enough. I will stop my judgment right here. And it's where the mercy seat sits. It's just beautiful. Okay. 22. Instruction to Solomon, his son. We call the temple of Solomon, but really it was the temple of David. David planned the temple. He measured it all out. He got all the materials to build it. He got all the gold to build it. He got all the silver to build it. He planned it all out. We're going to find out here. Verse 11. Now, my son, we'll get to that, but this is a really, really good verse. This is a good challenge to any young man. Now, my son, may the Lord be with you, and may you prosper and build the house of the Lord your God, as he has said to you. Only, may the Lord give you wisdom and understanding and give you charge concerning Israel. Did God give that to him? Did God give him wisdom and understanding that he may have charge over concerning Israel? God gave him that. that you may keep the law of the Lord your God. Did Solomon do that? No, he didn't. He multiplied horses, he multiplied gold, he multiplied silver, he multiplied wives, and at the end of his life he was sacrificing children to Molech and worshiping the Ashtoreth pole. Don't learn from people's bad mistakes. May God give you understanding that you may have charge concerning those that are put underneath your authority. But don't forget that the reason for it, what is the reason? That you may keep the law of the Lord your God. Then you will prosper if you take care to fulfill the statutes and the judgments which the Lord charged Moses concerning Israel. Be strong and of good courage. Do not fear, nor be dismayed. I say that to my son almost daily. Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. Indeed, I have taken much trouble. Indeed, I have taken much trouble to prepare the house of the Lord, 100,000 talents of gold and 1,000,000 talents of silver and bronze and iron beyond measure. It's like we don't even have enough measurement big enough for the bronze and iron that I prepared. For it is so abundant. I have prepared timbers and stone also, and you may add to them. He says you don't have to just make this. You can add to it. You can add to it as much as you want. And of gold and silver and bronze and iron, there is no limit. Arise and begin working, and the Lord be with you. So we have a picture of the temple up here, just really quickly to go over it. We have the Holy of Holies right here. We have the veil of separation. We have the lampstands and the showbread. And this is all planned out by David. David gave this plan. God gave this plan to David. David passed it on to his son Solomon. It very much copies the tent, but there are some things that are different. Like, for instance, the wash basins outside and the lavers. We have the stone altar out here. I thought that altar was bronze. The outside altar was bronze, wasn't it? I thought it was called the bronze altar. Bronze represents judgment. The judgment of God is on the outside of the temple. Those that are outside the temple of God will suffer judgment. The altar smoking with dead flesh and blood and all the sacrificing, everything was out here. As soon as you entered in, you're surrounded by cherubim. You're surrounded by a golden lampstand, by the smell of sweet bread, the smell of incense on the altar, of incense, completely night and day. Judgment, peace. Wretched smells, sweet smells. Wretched sights, sweet sights. Don't be on the outside of the temple of God. Be on the inside. Paul says that the veil of separation was torn in Jesus Christ, that we may enter in boldly to the throne of grace. So this is all planned out by David, and I knew that, but it was it was a good reminder to me that David really, really loved the Lord. And what did he say to Solomon? Indeed, I have taken much trouble. I planned this thing out to prepare the house of the Lord. And then he names what he has. Okay, we need to get moving because it is late, and I need to get going so that we can get through 1 Chronicles. Okay, chapter 23 is a lot of organization. Now, what I got out of this is David had it organized, and I need to be more organized. That's what I got out of this whole chapter 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. It's all instructions about the officers in the temple, about the singers in the temple, about the order of the musicians. The musicians had an order. The officers had an order. This musician comes on at this time. That guy does this at this time. The organization of the Meritites. I don't know who those are. or the Kohathites. Weren't the Kohathites the... Okay, thank you. The Kohathites were the division of the Levites that carried the ark. The Kohathites are the sons of Aaron. The duties of the Levites, and David has this all planned out through the revelation of the Lord. And it was organization of the gatekeepers, who keeps the gate, organization of the treasuries of the temple, who takes care of the money, organization of the officers outside the temple, the people that were in charge of guarding the perimeter, and then the organization. He starts inside with the priests, Levites, musicians, gatekeepers, and then it goes all the way out to Israel. The organization ripples all the way out to Israel. And it was like, man, I need to be organized. Not because it will help me be more efficient at my work, but because that's the way God is. God is very organized. And I was talking to my wife, I'm like, I was convicted because I'm not a very organized person, and that is part of God's character. Part of God's character is organization. Okay, it goes through the leaders, the 12, and then the counselors of David. Okay, charge to Israel, chapter 28. This is a cool chapter. If you want to read this chapter, it's a really, really good chapter. I would read it if we had time, but we don't have time. We're going to skip to verse 11. Then David gave his son Solomon the plans for the vestibule, its house, its treasuries, its upper chambers, its inner chambers, and the place for the mercy seat, and the plans for all that he had by the Spirit. How did he get the plans? By the Spirit of the court of the Lord, of the house of the Lord, and all the chambers all around of the treasuries and the house of God, of the treasuries of the dedication, for dedicating things, also the division of the priests. God gave him how to divide the priests and the Levites for all the works of the service of the house of the Lord, for all the articles of the service of the house of the Lord. David was given a great honor. He didn't get to build the temple, but he did get to plan the temple, which is so cool. He was given that privilege through the Spirit of the Lord. He gave gold by weight for the things of gold and for all the articles used in every kind of service, also silver for all the articles of silver, and weight for the articles of everything of service. And then the lampstands for their gold. He goes down in the weights and the refining gold, and the refined gold by weight for the altar of incense, for the construction of the chariot, that is the gold cherubim and that spread their wings to overshadow the ark of the covenant of the Lord. So God allowed David, almost like Moses, to see the ark, the temple in a way, but he didn't get to build it. Moses got to see the promised land, but he didn't get to go into it. Okay, chapter 29. We'll finish up here. Verse 10. Okay, so I like this. This is such a father. You know, Solomon's like in his 30s at this point, right? He's in his late 20s, early 30s. And further, David comes out. I could totally see my dad saying this. Like verbatim, even in the Old English. Furthermore, King David said to all of the assembly, "My son Solomon, whom alone God has chosen, is young and inexperienced. And the work is great, because the temple is not from man, but for the Lord God. Now for the house of," I can totally see, couldn't you see my dad saying that? My son, he's young and inexperienced. The work is great. Help him out. He needs some help. Now for the house of my God, I have prepared with all my might. David is just like very, very much involved in the construction here, as much as he possibly can be. God may give you a different gift than you want. David wanted to build the house of the Lord, but he couldn't. God said, that is not your job, but you can do this. okay, I'm going to do this with all my might so that I can help that person who would really like to have their job, but I'm not going to covet their job. I'm going to help them in every way so that they can do their calling of the Lord in the best way possible. Instead of coveting and David sitting, I don't get to build the house of the Lord. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? He takes that time and he prepares and he's like, okay, I don't get to build the house of the Lord, but I do get to do this. And he was excited about it. Don't mumble and grumble about what you can't do for the Lord. Rejoice and have vigor in what you can do for the Lord. Maybe God hasn't called you to what you wanted to do for the Lord. Do what he says you can do, and you'll find that the blessing of the Lord is in that. Let's see. The prayer of David. I want to end with this. The Israelites gave some stuff for the temple too. That's in verse 6 through 9. We're going to end with verse 10 through 19. Therefore David blessed the Lord before all the assembly, and David said, Blessed are you, O Lord God of Israel, our fathers, forever and ever. Yours, O Lord, is the great, excuse me, had a hiccup there. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness. I love that sentence. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness, the power and the glory, the victory and the majesty. For all that is in heaven and in earth is yours. These are true words. Yours is the kingdom, O Lord. You have exalted. Where have we heard that before? Yours is the kingdom, O Lord. Sounds like the Lord's Prayer. And you are exalted as head over all. Both riches and honor come from you, and you reign over all. In your hand is power and might. In your hand it is to make great and to give strength to all. Now therefore, our God, we thank you and praise your glorious name. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to offer so willingly as this? He's saying, who are we that we get to build the house of the Lord? That we, of all people, get to build the house of the Lord. For all things come from you, and of your own we have given you. He's like, I love that. And of your own we have given you. That's a great thing to do with the sacrifice of the Lord. God, this was yours anyway. Here you go. It's yours. Of your own, I love that. Of your own we have given you. We didn't give you something that was ours. We gave you something that was already yours. You give it to us. It reminds me of my children when I give them something and I ask them to share it with me. Sometimes I'll give them a cookie and I'll ask them to share it with me, and they're, really hard for them. Ugh. And then as soon as they give it to me, I'll usually break off a little chunk for myself, and then I'll give them the rest of the cookie. I just gave you that cookie. Can you share it with me? Oh, that's where it's hard. Can you share with what God has given you? For all things come from you, and of your own we have given you. For we are aliens and pilgrims before you. Aliens there is not Martians coming out of the sky. It is people that are not necessarily from or deserve any of the blessings that the Lord has given. As were all our fathers, our days on the earth are as a shadow and without hope. O Lord, our God, all this abundance that we have prepared to build you a house for your holy name is from your hand. That is a really good thing to do. When you are blessed and you have so much, just say, it's from your hand, Lord, and is all your own. I know also, my God, that you test the heart and have pleasure in uprightness. As for me, in the uprightness of my heart, I have willingly offered all these things. And now with joy I have seen your people who are present here to offer willingly to you. O God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, our fathers, keep this forever in the intent of the thoughts of the hearts of your people, and fix their hearts towards you. What a beautiful prayer that David's praying over his people, over the people of Israel here. Let's read that again. And the Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, our fathers, keep this memory, this example of giving back to the Lord what he has given us forever in the intent of the thoughts of the heart. He goes down through everything that they're going to do. The intent of the thought, which comes from the heart, of your people, and fix their hearts towards you. Now here's the beautiful thing. We are branched in. We are branched into Israel. This blessing is as much a blessing, this prayer is as much a prayer for Israel as it is for you and me. Even though we are not born of Israel, we are grafted in. And this prayer is just as much for us. And David assembled all the people. He said, bless the Lord your God. So all the assembly blessed the Lord their God of their fathers, and bowed their heads and prostrated themselves before the Lord and the king. And they made sacrifices to the Lord and offered burnt offerings to the Lord on the next day, 1,000 bulls, 1,000 rams, 1,000 lambs, with their drink offerings and sacrifices in abundance for all Israel. That's a lot of flesh. It was all burnt. Probably some of it was eaten, I don't know. Okay. Thus David the son of Jesse reigned over all Israel, and the period of his reign over Israel was 40 years. 7 years he reigned in Hebron, and 33 years he reigned in Jerusalem. So he died in a good old age. I love that. He died in a good old age. My uncle turned 80 today. And I would say that's a good old age. Which is a blessing from the Lord. Old age, a good old age is a blessing from the Lord. Full of days and riches and honor, and Solomon his son reigned in his place. I thought that was just a really, really good verse to end on. So he died in a good old age, full of days and riches and honor. Were his riches and honor in the wealth that he had given to the Lord, or were his riches and honor awaiting him? I think it's talking about the riches and honor that were awaiting him. So the acts of the King David, first and last, indeed, they are written in the book of Samuel the seer, in the book of Nathan the prophet, and in the book of Gad the seer. We have books that were written about David that we don't know about. Interesting. Nathan the prophet and Gad the seer both wrote about David. We have Samuel's writings. With all his reign and his might, and in the events that happened to him, to Israel, and to all the kingdoms of the land. There's the book of 1 Samuel. We went long, but we got it done. 1 Chronicles. Well, we're close. 1 Samuel has Samuel in it, which is pretty close.